So it's like I'm getting to that point where I'm a curator of guitar sounds, essentially. And like you said, I've made records, I've mixed, I've played live anywhere from an arena in Singapore to a basement in New Jersey. Why me? Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff with guitar sounds, and I think that my taste is pretty sweet, and I think you're going to like it too. That's kind of like my underlying message.
Hey, it's Mike Myers from the Songwriting for Guitar podcast. Before we jump into this episode, if you're a songwriter, guitarist, and you're looking to advance your skills, gain confidence, and monetize your craft, be sure to check out songwritingforguitar.com for all our free resources. So let's jump into this week's episode. Beautiful. Nick, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a wonderful
dude, I
July
am super
morning.
pumped. Yeah. On a Wednesday, brightener. I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but I feel like I have my coffee right here.
I was doing coffee a little bit earlier, and now I've switched over to water, some protein.
You're being super responsible. You're being very responsible in the hydration level.
Yeah, you know how that is when like you might be feeling miserable, like and you're like, what's my problem? And then you're like, well, cool, I haven't drank any water in 12 hours, so maybe that explains it.
It's dehydration right there. Dude, I'm pumped because I knew your band, the Swellers, for a long time. And like, I saw y'all play at Warped Tours, at an old venue in Pittsburgh that was called the Smiling Moose, that's no longer there. And it was like the staircase from hell. That was one of the worst staircases to lug gear. That was awful. But what I find so fascinating now in what you've done, starting Oneder Effects and your own pedal company, to me, I want to talk about that trajectory of how I feel entrepreneurship is something that's very built into punk rock bands. And I feel like it's just something we don't talk enough about. But when I see now a lot of people that I loved that were in bands, they have their own companies now. They're starting things. And it feels like that's such a natural extension. So if I were to go back to the beginning of when you started the Swellers, did you think of it as a business, or did you think of like, we're going to start a band? And then suddenly, as you're going through the process, you started to see all these things you had to take control over and take charge of?
Yeah, I would say even to this day, I don't look at Oneder Effects as much of a business. Unfortunately, I'm not very business minded, but my approach makes that kind of work out really well. People have talked to me about starting a business and running a business, and I had a friend I was going to start a business with a few years ago. And he was like, well, let's take these seminars and let's try to get this loan and I was like, whoa, like what? Like that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of headache and a lot of time. I'm like, how about we just take the thing, spend this much money on it, sell it, and hope we make more money. And as long as we're making more money than we're spending, we get to have that extra money. And that's literally it for my pedals. And of course, my accountant wife hates me for that because I'm supposed to be keeping better track of everything. And, people are like, what are your margins on the pedal? What percentage of blah, blah? And I'm like, dude, I sell the thing and I hope I make more money than I put into it. And I know I am, because I know how much I'm spending versus how much I'm making. I don't have a spreadsheet that tells me that, but I have that gut feeling of like, I think I'm doing okay. There's still money in my bank account, right?
Yeah.
So with that, every year I do have to pick up a few more real businessy things, which I like to just bury my head in the sand and be like, I don't want to have to deal with this. And then at the end of the year, when I do my taxes and kind of see the damage, and that's when I'm like, okay, so here are the actual numbers. Here's how everything's going. But you're right. As far as the being in a punk rock band thing goes, you're working on your product. you're developing your craft, you're getting your stuff out there, and you're meeting people, you're developing a community, which is actually really important for any kind of indie type of, band or business, getting people involved in some way. So yeah, I've always been, I don't want to call myself, like an artist, but I'm always like, I got to do the thing and then hope it works out later. So yeah, and it's been a long time since, I was actively doing the band thing. And, I might start doing the band thing again, which is really exciting. Of course, it'll be like 5% as intense as it used to be. Like, I don't know if a lot of people realize how much we toured, but it was so much. And it's not like, oh man, remember that 2-3 year span we had where we stayed on tour a lot? We stayed on tour for 10 years without being home for more than 2.5 months at a time. That was the longest we'd ever stayed home in a row, was 2.5 months in 10 years. And part of that was just autopilot, being like, because back then you had to play shows and tour to get people to know who you were. There wasn't like an algorithm that could suddenly propel you to the forefront. So we had to really just make that FaceTime with everybody. So yeah, and I think my brother was more business minded with the band. He was the one talking about the rollout plan and the album cover and what it means. Whereas I was just like, here are the songs and here's the guitar I'm going to play. So yeah, I think taking the pressure off in that way, and it's not intentional, that's just the kind of person I am. I think that made things both things successful in a way.
What's super interesting right there is you said, especially if we were to go to a 10-year touring span, I don't think people realize how intense that is because, when people think, oh, musicians are on tour, they think of luxury buses and they think, oh, and they're here. And it's like, no. It's like, it's a van. You're in close proximity with some dudes for a very extensive period of time. It's nice if you get a hotel. Doesn't mean you're going to get a hotel. You probably won't get a hotel tonight. So you're going to have to find a Walmart parking lot that's pretty decent to sleep in. Right. And that's what you're going to be doing. And maybe we're going to break even. And then we're going to do that all again when we get back home because there's another tour that's happening. To me, that has to have in a person, a little bit of grit, perseverance of just like digging in, because to accept that sort of regimen, that way of life and that consistency, just doing it again and again, you have to believe in the thing, number one, because most people wouldn't, don't necessarily do it that long in something they don't believe in. And also feel like there's purpose behind it, that there's intentional purpose of why they're doing it. And to me, that's an extension later on in the things that you create as a business owner too.
Yeah, you're right. And, looking back, like I mentioned before, it was kind of autopilot. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, that was hard work and there was grit and there was perseverance. But for a while there in the last 10 years being home, I had thoughts of like, God, I was kind of an idiot. Like, why did I tour that much? It didn't make our band exponentially bigger. We could have taken more breaks. And nobody told us we could take a break. Nobody was forcing us to do it. But there was nobody ever being like, hey, why don't you stay home for a year? Why don't you just recharge? And who knows, that could have made our band last longer than it did. But yeah, it was just kind of the only thing I knew how to do was play guitar and drive. So that's what we did. And, we had a bunch of songs in us and we got them all out. And then our break, like when we took a break, it was in the form of, guys, I love you, but I don't want to see you for 10 years in this context, and I wish I did get to see my band members more often in that 10-year span. I seriously only saw them 3, maybe 4 times except for my brother who lives nearby. But yeah, like just life happened. You know, there was marriages and kids, you know, buying houses. And so, yeah, I met up with the guys in March and I said, come over to my house. Like, and it's not like an event. It wasn't like a wedding that we were all meeting up at like in the past.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out and we'll bring our guitars. We'll see how it goes. Let's maybe we'll play. Who knows? And we played for like 2 days straight and we had so much fun.
Yeah.
And it also made me realize how, I don't want to say like good we were, but how tight we were because we still had it without practicing. 10 years later, we did the exact starts and stops that we used to do. And we looked at each other and we were like, oh man. And it felt different this time because we've all played with other musicians in the past 10 years. I've made a lot of records with bands. Dude, like the stops and the starts that our band was able to do without even counting off or even looking at each other, and the dead silence between songs, things like that. We were just like, oh man, that we had something pretty special. That was pretty cool. So yeah, at the end of that, we were like, are we doing this? Are we doing a reunion show? Or
yeah, it's just like, is this, you guys feeling this? That's incredible.
What's crazy is it's been months and we've had that in the back of our minds, but life is just so busy that it really isn't a priority, but we're like, we'll get there. And it feels really good that we're not in any kind of rush. But, you know, for anybody listening, the Swellers, I guess we're back, but we're kind of like still waking up from that hibernation. And it feels good that we're not in a rush. And there's no timeline and there's no goal other than to have fun and, you know, hopefully make people happy.
There's a lot in what you said that I think is super interesting, especially the idea of that 10-year break. You looked back and you were like, man, if maybe we would have paused for like a year, maybe we would still be maybe the longevity would have been longer because we just had a pause from each other, a break. And it just like that culmination of nonstop touring just kept on going to the point where it was just like, oh, we need to have a break. I have to recharge. I have to do something else. You have to do something else. It's like, I don't know if Oprah gave away different careers. You do something else and you do something else and you do something else. That it feels really good to then mentally step away, because it's not that you kill the thing. It's not that you let the thing stop, but you allow your brain to settle, your emotions to settle, your body to readjust to different things, so that when you do come back together, it does feel fresh. And as you said, it feels like we're all on the same wavelength in terms of when we start, when we stop. It's just like, it's still there. It doesn't go away because, you know, you built something that was incredible. We just kind of stepped away and did other things. We played with we were still working on our skills. We were still developing them and didn't let them just gather dust. But now it's in a place that's different. It's not going to be the same like regimented touring of all the time, because 10 years, things have changed. But now it feels like, hey, we're going to pick up and we're going to see how it goes. And it seems too, it's the enjoyment and not like we have these specific expectations of what's going to happen and it needs to happen this way. It needs to be this way. It's like, no, we can play and we'll just see what goes on.
Yeah, that is totally true. It's just kind of, you know, looking back when we took that break, it was kind of like we got to the point where we were offered a couple of tours and we were like, hey, I think our fan base is kind of, it's not going downhill, but it's kind of at this plateau where we know we can play to this many people in this city and this many people in this country. And we were getting offered tours that we were actually turning down for the first time because, you know, even after being a band for 13 years, you know, when we get offered like, hey, you guys are going to be direct support for so-and-so mid-level punk band, and you're going to get paid $400 a night. And for a direct support slot, that's actually kind of good for a band like us. Getting $400 a night is like, thinking about it now, it makes me want to throw up. But, back then we were like, oh, hell yeah. But when we got to the point where $400 was like, I'm not leaving my house for $400 a night. And, this thing starts in Montreal. I don't feel like making that drive. I don't care how cool the tour is. Then we started talking like, I think we're tired. And we know that if we want to keep this going, we have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And there is a chance that it'll start to go downhill. So we felt we were at the peak.
Yeah.
As far as touring, fan base, and songwriting. It was almost like the last song we wrote and recorded. There was a part of me that knew it was going to be the last one. So when we all talked about it, we were all kind of like, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's do it for like another year. And then that's when we booked like the final year of shows. And other countries and other promoters actually reached out to us when they heard about that. And they were like, well, you got to come to Australia. Here's an Australian festival tour. We're like, oh, well, that's fun. Cool. Got to hang out with friends and have like a free trip.
Yeah.
And then, we did UK and Europe. And because of the way that it worked out, we played our final show in Belgium, which is just kind of funny to me. It was one of our biggest shows ever because it was a festival.
Yeah.
But it was like, hell yeah, Belgium, thanks for this. And it was like, Belgium, like this band that's kind of based in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, well, aren't you going to do one final show in Flint? And we're like, no, dude, like that show to 8,000 people in Belgium was pretty cool. I think we're going to call it there, as weird as it is to say that Belgium was the final resting place. But
when you came back from that tour and you were just like, it is done, was it an easy transition to just then be like, okay, so now I don't do this and now I have to do other things? Was it just like a sigh of relief or like a weird acclimation? Like I imagine when, a diver is submerged for so many depths, then they have to go in this like decompression chamber and get used to be like, okay, this is new.
Yeah. It wasn't easy at all. There was a sigh of relief initially. I unpacked my suitcase fully for the first time in 10 years. I always had like a go bag. And I was like, I can take everything out of this and then put the suitcase actually on a shelf or in an attic. And, I had gotten married. We got 2 dogs. So I was like, well, this is great. I get to be home, maybe going to have kids someday. Who knows? And I was actually thinking about this the other day. My wife took a picture of me, I don't know, like a week after we got home. And I was laying on my back on the floor in the living room with a guitar on me, staring at the ceiling with an amp behind my head.
Yeah.
And I was just playing. And I think she posted it and it said like, husband doesn't know what to do with himself. And like, it's cute and it's funny. And even at the time I was like, yeah, that is funny. But now I look back and I'm like, dude, I really didn't know who I was anymore or what to do. And yeah, if I'm being honest, I would say I started feeling a part of society and knowing what I was all about in 2020 when I started doing the pedals. So 5 years, there was 5 years of me floating like a ghost, being like, am I going to be band guy? I need to start another band. Oh, no, I don't think so. The other little band that I started, nobody listened to, even though it was my favorite thing I've ever done. So I was like, okay, well, I did that for me. That's fine. No, nobody says that your band has to go on tour and be successful. So I was like, okay, well, I'll make other records. I'll record bands. So doing that was great. It kept me busy. It kept me involved in music. And I did that for like the 5 years before COVID and a little bit into COVID too, whenever we could sneak in bands and whenever it wasn't super scary or dangerous. And I would say that was kind of keeping me afloat, financially and, being involved. Like I recorded the
Yeah.
first 2 Hot Mulligan records, and the band Greet Death, that's doing really well right now, recorded and mixed some of their stuff. And then during the pandemic, bands I grew up playing with and listening to, No Trigger and Much the Same, I did their records too. So I was like, this is cool. I'm glad that I get to be involved. And then when the pedal thing came around, it was like the first time I had a job that made money, like that made money where I was like, this is cool. With the recording, I would make enough money to basically give to my wife and say, hey, here's some fun money I made. Like, so she has the full-time real job. Here's the fun money. We can pay some bills and maybe go on a vacation, maybe buy another TV. And I was totally cool with that, and so was she. Luckily, she didn't kick me out. But yeah, when I started doing the pedal thing, I was like, oh, I have a career and a job and a lot of focus. And I liked it a lot better than being in a band or recording other bands, because it was just me making things and then putting it out there and saying, if you want it, go for it, go buy it. And it got even cooler as the years went on, because I started doing collaborations with bands and with friends. So, I never thought in a million years I would be hooked up with Less Than Jake again. We toured with them a bunch back in the day. I listened to them a ton before we even started the Swellers. And then, 2022 rolls around and Chris DeMakes from Less Than Jake calls me and he's like, dude, you're doing pedals now? And I was like, A, yes, B, great to hear from you. And it's like, this is cool. Like here we are, picking up where we left off. It had probably been at least 5 or 6 years since I had talked to the guy. And that was probably like a, Facebook Messenger or something back then. And then, he's just like, let's do a pedal. And I was like, dude, that's actually a great idea. A ska punk guitar pedal is really marketable. I think people would be really stoked on that. And then it just kind of kept going. I did one with No Effects, ended up doing one with the Get Up Kids, and Bo from Harm's Way. And then, I got one with Newfound Glory coming up, which is kind of crazy because it's like we were never close with Newfound Glory. We kind of ran parallel to each other. And then because of the pedals, Chad jumped over to me and was like, dude, pedals, let's talk. So the guitar pedal thing has allowed me to like kind of make some cool connections and cool friends. And, Matthew from Not a Surf's probably my favorite band of all time. And I was able to send him a pedal and talk about gear, and it's just like, this is really cool, stuff that my band never, it's such a competitive world. And it's like, if you wanted to make friends with a band, you likely had to tour with them or at least play a show, or they would be a big fan of yours to begin with. So there was a bunch of bands that we just never were able to cross paths with, that the pedals, brought me closer to. So that's a long way of saying I was not good for a while. And then luckily, I think finding the pedals got me into a place where I felt like I belonged.
And it feels like, especially maybe songwriters and creatives deal with this, where there are periods where you don't feel good with the thing you're doing, or it feels like, you, as you said, kind of like floating around like a ghost. Like, I'm going to do a little bit of this, I'm going to try a little bit of this, and then through that, what feels like floating, I would say, is also kind of a little bit of pivoting. You try here, you see if this works. I don't know. Do you like it? Yeah, it's okay. But then through the willing of the messiness, or messy middle, some people will call, some people will say it just takes a bit. Suddenly you find what truly does make you super excited. And as you said, it is a passion, and it's great when it starts to form into a career. But at first, it doesn't necessarily have this clear start and beginning. It just seems like it forms over time. And maybe this is why people stop, because there's not that clear start, but they're in the middle of their own messy middle. And if they just would stick with that, eventually something would form.
Yeah, it's a really kind of a cool, interesting start, to the pedal world, where I started learning how to build pedals and solder for fun, and then about 3 months later is when the COVID lockdown happened. And I was kind of just like, well, I got nothing else to do. I'm stuck at home for a couple months. So I'm like, I'll make these silly little knob boxes and I'll post them on my Instagram, say, look what I made. And then, a person would write me and say, cool, can you build me one? Like, yeah, sure. And then I posted a picture of that. And then 2 people got a hold of me. Hey, I want a pedal built by Nick from Wonder Studios or Nick from the Swellers. Like, that's cool. So then after, doing like 20, 25 pedals for people, I was kind of like, I should probably start an Instagram for the pedals, And it was right around the time where music gear was doing very well. Everybody was getting money and everybody was stuck at home. And they were like, all right, cool. Wonder Effects must be this new important pedal company. I want to support the little guy. And people just started buying my stuff that, had no idea that I used to be in a band, that had no idea that I'd recorded records. So I just became just pedal guy. And within a year, I was Nick from Wonder Effects. Nobody knew about the other stuff by comparison. And to this day, when I'm speaking to somebody, whether it's in person or on a podcast or through DMs, I sometimes will say, well, yeah, I used to be in this band a long time ago. And then sometimes they'll be like, oh, cool, right on. But a lot of times they'll be like, dude, duh. Like, that's how I found you. I used to come see you all the time. So the fact that you told me you were aware of the Swellers, when we started this podcast, I was like, okay, I'm not going to try to like sneak that in. Like, so I used to do this thing, because it almost sounds like I'm trying to be like extra humble, but really I just don't know where people know me from. And it's kind of a cool thing when I'll post something like the Greet Death record that I mixed just came out. So on the Wonder Effects thing, I'm like, hey, Greet Death's record just came out. Everybody seems to be loving it. I mixed it and I did their first 2 records. So I think it's really cool that they asked me back to do this one, 5 years later. And then, the number of comments and messages I got of people being like, dude, I had no idea that you made records at all, let alone these Greet Death records. They're some of my favorites. They're like, I love Greet Death and I love your guitar pedals. It's crazy that those worlds combined. And then again, like with the Swellers, I'll post something and I'm doing like a Swellers version of my Old Blue Overdrive that actually comes out tomorrow. And it has the Swellers logo on it. And it's this cool seafoam sparkle. I posted pictures. And because of that, people were writing me and they were like, I've been following you for 5 years and I had no idea that you were the singer of that band. And I drop it here and there because it was obviously part of my life. So it's like some of my regurgitated content and stories come from that time. So it's really cool when everything when people are like, I didn't know that you were the same person that did this. And there's a lot of sneaky band dudes that are doing guitar pedal companies. So it's kind of fun to, talk about that sort of stuff. I think it's something that us touring guitar players kind of have a knack for as far as marketing. And what I was going to say before, like you take this box with knobs on it and it makes a particular sound, and they're not cheap. It's not like you're trying to sell a hoodie to somebody like at the merch table. It's like they're close to $200 a pop, sometimes more.
Yeah.
So the fact that, you got to come up with a story about each one, and it's a lot easier with like, oh, the Newfound Glory boost, this is how you get the Newfound Glory sound out of your high gain amp. And then like with this one, I was just holding up the Wonder Drive. It's like one of the first circuits I ever did. My whole thing was just like, it's not based on anything. It's a complete happy accident. It does the power pop 90s sludge distortion, and it'll take you from Weezer to Lynyrd Skynyrd if you dial back the gain. So, coming up with like keywords, not a gimmick because it's all real, but yeah, being able to come up with these stories and ways to market the pedals is that's the most exciting thing for me. Picking the colors and the shape and the sounds is great, and then telling the story a little bit later is a lot of fun for me.
It feels like it's also extension of things that what you did informs how you create your pedals now, because like the story extension to me sounds like an extension of songwriting. It feels like, because that's what you're doing when you're songwriting. You're telling a story, you're conveying your personal, this is why I'm singing this to you. And here you've got to now relate this to the pedal and make it, here's why I created this thing that is $200, maybe $300, but here's why it matters. And you going through the process of recording bands and getting tones and finding out the right mix and the right balance informs, well, you know what? I noticed this is missing, or I wish there was something that was like this. Informs, or I, at least, and I could be wrong, kind of informs why you create certain pedals and the need of certain things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I wanted to make stuff that I wanted to use in the studio. That's why I called it Oneder Effects, because I had Wonder Studios and I made all these records. And my goal was like, I made like clones before, for like a few months getting started. Because when you're learning, you kind of just build stuff that already exists and you can put your own spin on it, do your own colors of pedals and knobs, kind of make it your own. And a lot of people get started that way. And then, they might still be doing that to this day. They might stop, it's kind of hard to maintain. But I wanted to do my own circuit board, my own circuit, my own enclosure, powder coat, art, everything, the knob template. I want it to be, I want it so if like you saw that at Guitar Center, you're like, that's a real guitar pedal company. So I thought I'll just make one pedal and it'll be called the Wonder Drive. And it's what I use, something like this, on all of my records that I've ever worked on. And it's kind of like my signature model distortion pedal. But then the ideas started splitting and it was like, well, I could do the Wonder Drive, but it's not shaping up like I wanted it to. It's doing a different thing that I love. I'm going to make the Red Rider distortion. I've always wanted a piece of gear called the Red Rider, like I love that name. I'll make it red. And I'll make this one a little bit more like what I use on bass in my studio. And then I was like, well, I'm listening to a lot of Electric Wizard and stony, sludgy metal right now. Yeah. I want to do something that's kind of like a super fuzz or a hyper fuzz that just sounds like the nastiest doomy fuzz ever. So right there, I was like, oh, well, I have 3 separate ideas. And then that turned into 4 and 5. And some of those circuits are still in my line today, which is cool. But yeah, telling the story in the sense where it's like, I wanted to have a pedal board in my brain, not even if it's not real, that is like, here's my boost, here's my overdrive, here's my distortion, here's my fuzz, here's my delay and reverb, here's my modulation. And I've had that goal since the beginning, but I'm still not there. And, for good reason. I'm still tweaking and refining. Yeah. Like, I think I finally got the boost that I want. Like yesterday, and it's been a long time. Something really unique that I'm like not sick of. Because sometimes you put out something and you're like, even a song that you wrote, let's say, and you're like, yeah, I've been playing this song in the set, but like, eventually I'm going to phase that one out because I know I can write a better one. So that's kind of like where I am with a boost pedal. And then I have my overdrive and my distortion that I love. And then finally a fuzz pedal that I've refined from my other designs. And I'm going to have the coolest name and the coolest artwork. So it's like I'm getting to that point where I'm a curator of guitar sounds, essentially. And like you said, I've made records. I've mixed. I've played live. Anywhere from an arena in Singapore to a basement in New Jersey. I know how to dial in my stuff. And I've made records of songs that I wrote in big studios with great producers. So when you look at all that, these are all the things that I've done that involve guitar sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you should buy something from me because I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out a way to say that in a friendlier way, but it's like, why me? Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff with guitar sounds, and I think that my taste is pretty sweet, and I think you're going to like it too. That's kind of like my underlying message.
Yeah. There's a book that I love, and it's called The Big Leap, and it's by Gay Hendricks, and he talks about this idea of like your zone of genius. And it's like what you described right there, from those experiences, from all those scenarios, informed how you create what you create.
For sure.
And it's tailored specifically to you. Like no one has had your exact experience and your exact journey, which in turn creates something very unique. And that's what it is. And to me, that's what makes it even cooler in those stories, because you said, like, from an arena in Singapore to a basement in New Jersey, to that, like, I don't think some people can comprehend that trajectory or jump. That's like, that's extreme. And it informed how you create, what things sound like.
Yeah. It's like one of my favorite things going on tour was figuring out what my rig was going to be. And sometimes that rig would last like a year or two, but it'd be like, all right, here's the amp, here's the guitar, and here's the pedals. And back then I didn't play a lot of pedals because I used amp distortion, and the Swellers weren't really like a dreamy soundscape with delay and reverb kind of band. We played big chuggy power chords and solos. And the band ending actually and making records for other bands, it was one of the first times I bought a single coil guitar, like a Telecaster and I've had Strats in the past, but just for a solid 15 years, I only played humbucker guitars because that's what I played, the songs that I wrote, the sound that I liked. So like when I'm finally playing a Telecaster through a clean guitar amp, and then it's like, well, that's cool, but that's a little sterile. What would happen if I put a guitar pedal in front of that? And I used to look at distortion and overdrive pedals as cheating. Like, this is a fake way to get distortion. And then I realized that's just not it at all. It's analog circuitry. It's just more circuitry that you're putting at the front of your amp. So your amp has these capacitors and resistors and tubes in it. This pedal has capacitors, resistors, transistors, no tubes in most guitar pedals because, they're fragile and actually unnecessary for most things. So it's like you're just adding more amp to the front of your amp, and you could turn it on and off, and it's down on the ground. So you don't need to go over to your amp. And it's just like, God, this is so cool. This is so genius. And it's just like the fact that they're modular, you can put them in whatever order you want. And yeah, there's just something tactile about, flipping switches and turning knobs. There's a lot of digital stuff going on right now, which I also love. But the cool thing about the guitar pedals is like you can put that into your digital rig and like just kind of have that satisfaction of being like, oh, there is some analog flavor here. So that's kind of what I've been doing on records and stuff that I've been working on in the last couple of years. It's like I'll be doing some digital stuff because it's quick and easy. You don't have to set up microphones, and you can save your client a bunch of time, and you can save yourself a lot of grief, phase issues and all this stuff. So putting my guitar pedals in front of like a digital amp head, and it's like modeled a digital guitar cabinet, can sound so cool. And the fact that I'm still turning knobs on my guitar pedal, I feel like I'm, actually doing something.
And I think from a recording standpoint, it is like a small thing that gives uniqueness, as opposed to like, cool, I have this cool setting from, I got my Kemper and I've got this setting and it's great and it's awesome. And it is. And you now have something that's just different than someone else that has that exact same setting and that exact same thing. It just adds, and probably even more so now because everything is very digital, an organicness or just a small thing that feels a little different, that adds your spin on it, as opposed to just that straight setting.
Yeah, and I'm sure if I dialed stuff in a little bit better, I could make the digital guitar pedals in my little rig sound better with the guitar amp head. But I love just using, like, I have a Fender Tone Master Pro, and it's kind of like their Kemper fractal neural DSP type thing, but it's from Fender.
Yeah.
And it has a nice big colorful light up screen with pictures on it. So it's really easy for a caveman like me to know what I'm doing. And you could actually like turn pretend knobs and it shows up on the screen what you're doing. But yeah, putting my guitar pedals in front of, let's say, a Fender Super Reverb head, and it reacts pretty much the same way. And like the way that my guitar pedals feel versus the digital pedals, I like a little bit better. So yeah, it's kind of, it's like a lot of people are afraid that, you know, digital is going to just completely take over everything. But I think there's always going to be a soft spot for, you know, having something old school. Like personally, I love burning amp tubes. I love having a guitar amp behind me. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, if I was touring, if I played a week worth of shows, the reliability of like a digital rig versus like this old, like, you know, 1983 Marshall JCM 800, that if it got a big dent in it, I'd be really bummed. You know, it's getting older and older every year.
Yeah.
So the fact that pedals or that amp is 40, no, is it 42 years old? Yeah, 40.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Or 43 now. No, 83. Yeah, sorry. I'm a guitar player. I don't do math. Yeah, so, and that's the thing too, like with analog stuff, I mean, God forbid one of my pedals screws up and starts making a lot of noise, but that is kind of endearing if there's like a slight little buzz or a little hum that you're getting from an analog piece of gear as opposed to, you know, the digital thing, which might clean it up. Yeah, it's just nice to know, you know, it's like some peace of mind. It's like, all right, at least I got a real guitar and a real pedal if the rest is fake.
I think too, it comes down to the story, because I think some of those imperfections, some of those things in which there are those dents, those sort of like feedback, the things that maybe, you know, sometimes it doesn't always, there's something about it still feels familiar, where sometimes the digital and it's great. Convenience is awesome. It's amazing. But sometimes the story isn't as interesting, and because usually it's just like, well, we made this because now it's clean and it's great and it will be very reliable.
Yeah.
That's cool. But it doesn't, like, it's a very short story and it's very tactile. It's very, okay.
Also, I do worry, like if I do play a Swellers show and people are like, well, what's his rig now? And I don't have any of my pedals on the board, that'll be a problem. People will be like, well, how am I supposed to trust this dude? But yeah, I mean, with the Swellers rig, it's probably going to be a gainy amp head, either a high gain Marshall style thing or like my Mesa Boogie Mark V, which that's what I toured with the last 4 years of us touring. And then after we got done touring, I sold it because I was like, I'm never going to need this much amp. And then last year, I actually rebought one because I was just like, oh, that was so cool. And that's like a piece of gear that I actually regret parting with, which doesn't happen very often. So yeah, I got one of those back and it's ridiculous and it's fun. But yeah, I think the Swellers Old Blue Overdrive in front of an amp like that. And then I also have my my Wet Hot American Bummer delay reverb pedal. And that's kind of just like my extra noise, whatever pedal. But that's about it, you know, for the stuff that we play. But yeah, and then there's also, you know, the chance that I might end up making a standalone amp-like distortion pedal. My HW2 pedal from Bo from Harm's Way, that's one of my favorite distortions. And it's kind of like a more tweakable version than what's in the Less Than Jake pedal for distortion. But I kind of want to, if I want to make a standalone version that's just that distortion, that's a little bit more tweakable. But then I run the risk of being pretty convoluted in my lineup. It's like I have 3 different, slightly changed versions that look different of the same circuit.
Mm-hmm.
It can get confusing, but it's just, again, I want it for me. And a lot of times when I want something and I put it out into the world, someone else is going to want it too.
Yeah.
So, it's not a priority of mine to make that pedal, but I might need it for the Swellers rig. We'll see, but in that case, I would play a big Fendery clean amp. Maybe I would have to see that. Then I have to buy stuff. I have to probably go buy a Fender Super Reverb, and I'd probably want a vintage one because they just are cooler. So it's like, it's the never ending tone search, I guess.
And also it's never ending. Like, I will buy that because why not? Why wouldn't I buy it? It's like, of course I am. It's a business expense now. I have to write this off as a business expense. So it's
true. And even if I don't end up playing it much, it'll look cool in the background of videos. That's another reason I came up with to get stuff.
Now, dude, like going forward, like if people are wondering, cool, I want some of these pedals. I want some of these different, I want to start looking and watching videos. Like, where is the best place to find you or follow you?
Oneder Effects on Instagram is kind of my number one hub for like instant information and content. I will cross post on TikTok and YouTube Shorts when I can, because if we're being honest, Instagram is just dying. I have so many followers on there now, and my reach is getting less and less and less. So mailing list is also great. So if you go to onedereffects.com, which is where you buy my stuff, sign up for that mailing list, because I like to do early access for people, secret links and things like that, to kind of reward the people that are there with me. Like, for example, this Swellers Old Blue pedal comes out tomorrow, but my mailing list got early access 2 days ago and almost sold me out already. So when this pedal comes out,
I'm
going to have like a handful and then be like, well, sorry, I told you, get on that mailing list.
I told you.
But yeah, and then I'm sure if there's any Swellers stuff popping up, the Swellers Instagram, and will probably cross post with me. We hope to do something again. It's like, that's another thing I didn't talk about. The music and the playing came right back to us.
Yeah.
But my voice did not. Imagine not working out for 10 years and then jumping back in. And I mean, you hear my voice now. I am a baritone. This is where I talk. In the Swellers, I am belting and shouting and rasping and singing up here. And I was able to do that a lot better when I was 28 years old. And I thought by the end of the touring that I actually had done permanent damage to my voice, because it was so much all the time. And I never took care of it very properly and warmed up, and I was still yelling to people after the show, in the loud venue.
Yeah.
So when we jammed, I was actually really disappointed, and I was like, guys, I'm so sorry that I can't keep up, but I'm going to get there. So I actually have been doing vocal warm-ups and singing practice, which is something I never would have thought I would have done in a million years. And the other day, I got through a bunch of songs in the right key, but we'll see how I feel, because I'm like, it won't hurt to go a half step down if we need to live. We already play a half step down. We're just E-flat people. But I'm like, guys, I might be a lot happier if we just play in D standard. That tiny difference just really makes all the difference. And like, I'm not supposed to be screaming like that. Like, I'm old and tired, and so yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna keep at it though, because if I can get back to how I used to do it, then I'll be very happy.
Dude, that's amazing. Especially just that little bit right there of working on the voice, because it is. I don't think people realize how tough it can be on vocals after you sing, but then after a show, you are talking to people. You're talking all the time. And then afterwards you're talking. And then it's just nonstop. And when you're doing that for so long, the vocal, it can wear. So doing those sort of exercises, those warm-ups to slowly get there, it's an endurance. But dude, that's awesome. Love it.
Thanks.
And so lots of different places to follow you. Wonder Effects, the Instagram, but the email list, I'll agree, is the best. I think email is the best. So it's like, go wondereffects.com, because the idea too of like getting early access to, and also pushing past the algorithm and just getting straight, when you send an email, goes direct to their inbox, which is fantastic.
Oh yeah. It feels good when those go out. It's like, hopefully, these people are opening stuff up, but I'll try to put some clickbait. Like every time I'll just be like, going out of business. And then you open it up and it's like, someday, who knows? So,
but not yet. Here's the new pedal. I love that.
No. I've been seeing a lot of ads on Instagram, like when you're scrolling through stories, and like for all these companies at the top, it'll be like, it's time to say goodbye in huge letters. And then at the bottom, it's like, we're getting rid of our best selling soap. So we're saying bye to this one soap and it's like, that's your tagline. It's like, we're saying goodbye. Like, oh, you're selling out of a soap.
Made me click this Dove ad. I was like, Dove? I thought Dove was safe. I didn't know Dove was going out of business.
It's like doves are endangered, apparently.
Nick, I really appreciate you taking time to hang out and talk all things pedal, music, and just your next steps, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And hopefully I'll have a lot more cool stuff to talk about eventually. And it actually was nice to talk to you because I was able to sort out what's going on in my life, because I have so much. My reminder app is not going to cut it. So yeah, now it's like, all right, what am I going to do today? What am I going to finish up? And yeah, more water and eating is next. So,
dude. Hey, it's Mike from Songwriting for Guitar. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And hey, don't leave. We got other cool videos you should check out too. Like some of these right here. Oh, that one right there. That's really good. You should click that. Right there. Just click it.